What is up, gamers? Staxwell's back at it again today with another meta breakdown. Unfortunately, we just don't have all of the deck lists available to us from this weekend's tournaments, but a lot of stuff did happen and we do have a good chunk of deck lists to look at. The Realm Fest 5K, as well as a couple of Battle Hardens happened over the weekend. So I don't want to waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and jump straight into it here. The Realm Fest, or the story of the Realm Fest over the weekend, was that Prism and Kayo are both very good decks. Adam Franzi's Prism list is relatively standard. These Prism lists have gotten relatively streamlined. This build is very similar to the one I uploaded on my channel on the Prism Mastery Guide. If you haven't seen that video, go ahead, check it out. A couple of big differences though. He is playing both of the Fableds, Great Library of Solana, and Light of Soul. I actually have kind of come around on both these cards. I actually think they're both quite powerful, so I'm glad to see Adam including them in his deck. He is also playing 3 less of the Red Heralds and instead sporting 2 Celestial Cataclysm, 1 Invoke Soraya, and 2 That All You Got. I actually think Celestial Cataclysm is a good inclusion to combat the mirror matches and also a good piece against Guardian or a lot of those very slow decks. Could also be very good versus Enigma. Invoke Soraya is a very interesting choice. I do like it thematically and flavorfully. I have not fallen in love with it in testing, but obviously it worked out for him. He was able to pilot this to a 2nd place finish. Also sporting 2 That All You Got, obviously a tool to combat Zen, being able to turn on all of your go again with it being a yellow and also having such a good defensive piece that doesn't, give up anything on offense. Seems like a very good call this meta, very powerful tool against Zen specifically. Also playing Dreamweavers. I would be curious to ask Adam why he was playing Dreamweavers or what matchups he felt like he needed them in. Notably only playing AB1, only the Null Rune Gloves. There is no Arcane Barrier in the boot slot, which a lot of Prisms normally do. I do feel like you need that to take down Kayo, and ultimately I do think this player wound up losing to Kayo. Maybe he acknowledged that it wasn't as good into Kayo, but he thought that that would be okay, that you didn't need AB2. I'm not entirely sure. But being able to make it this far, speaks volumes about the list. And I do think there are some pretty cool changes in here. Thomas Bailey able to take down Battle Hardened Bali, 1st place with Zen. So this is kind of how we could expect a lot of the Zens at Pro Tour to look like, right? 3 E-Strike, 2 Weakest Link, and 3 Command and Conquer in place of the Bond stuff. Looks like it's just a little bit slower, a little bit more mid-range. Maybe you take a setup turn and just throw a CNC, set up an Arsenal, or throw a Weakest Link, throw a E-Strike, set up an Arsenal. Maulin Key also making its way back into the list. Just a lot more mid-range. The list is also a lot more resilient to things like Amnesia, to things like Censor. Overall, it's still mostly the same deck that we're used to seeing, still sporting the Zephyr Needles. It is mostly the same Zen deck that we're used to, just a little bit slower, a little bit more mid-range, and with the inclusion of some disruption. This is what you could expect to play against if you're going to Amsterdam. The only super spicy thing I seen in here was Tearing Shuko, and maybe it's just the fact that it has Battle Worn, and then you're able to get a guaranteed 2 value out of it. Could be good in an aggro mirror. Overall, a relatively standard list. Moving on, we have Peng's Kayo list, got 2nd place at that same Battle Harden. And this Kayo list is following suit with a lot of the ways that Kayo is playing lately. The only difference is he's choosing to include some of the old favorites like Yellow Agile Windup, putting No Fear back in the deck. I like this card a lot. Very good against like Victor, and a lot of times it's very good against Kayo, being able to stop a Spindle or something like that. Also going back to the Runner. This card is like so high roll. When they start looping runner after runner against you, it just feels so hopeless. So I do kind of like this card. But overall, a relatively standard Kayo list. We've seen this list 100 times before with only minor variations. This list is also still sporting the Weakest Link. Weakest Link, such a natural inclusion in Kayo, so good against all the new heroes. It makes a lot of sense that it's in the list here. And notably, still playing a Reckless Swing. Reckless Swing, very good against Enigma. Peng is also even going back to Cast Bones. We've seen a lot of players cut this card lately. Peng denying all of the naysayers, all of the future sayers, and preserving tradition in playing 3 cast bones. The card is very powerful. Doesn't want to cut it. I sympathize with that a lot. It's hard to read this card and take it out of your deck. So shout out to Pang for getting second place. This list does seem very explosive, very powerful. Moving on, we have Daniel Ferrara's Battle Hardened Zen List. This is a Blitz deck. I was kind of curious what the Blitz meta looked like. So it's interesting to see that it's also just dominated by Zen. If you're looking to your upcoming skirmish season and you're unsure of what to play, go figure. The best deck in CC is also the best deck in Blitz. Not insanely surprising here. The only thing that is surprising to me is he's still maxing out and playing all of the Transcend cards. I wonder if this player even like put any thought into this being a Blitz deck. It looks like it was just converted from a CC deck to a Blitz deck. It doesn't even have like blue Plunder Run, which I kind of assumed that that card at least would make the cut. But it is sporting a Key Unleashed. I guess that is kind of like a Blitz only card. I haven't seen that in CC. The side deck is just a Cosmic Awakening and a Snag, and then a couple of alternative equipment slots, right? You have Mask of Momentum and AB2, probably against the Wizards. But yeah, a little bit disheartening to see that Blitz is nearly the same format, it seems. And we only have the first place list here, unfortunately. I was really hoping to do a top 8 Blitz breakdown. That would have been kind of cool, just because we haven't looked at the Blitz meta in so long. I don't even know what's good anymore. Moving on, we have another Prism list from the Realm Fest. Again, that Realm Fest did teach us that Prism is a very good deck. This is Barrett. Barrett is playing 3 Angelic Wrath, which I liked a lot. I don't think the last Prism was playing that, but Barrett is also playing Light of Soul and 3 That All You Got. So That All You Got proving itself to be a very powerful Prism card. Again, makes a lot of sense. Being a yellow that doesn't stop your offense value, so good against Zen in the current meta. Does seem like a very good inclusion. Great Library is in the sideboard. So I guess this kind of does teach us that the Fableds are just good in Prism. The results kind of speak for themselves. And then That All You Got is also just good in Prism. Dreamweavers, again, I need to message these people and figure out what is the Dreamweavers for, because I'm still not entirely sold on the card myself. But yeah, it is seem relatively close to what most Prisms are playing these days. Again, with a few key standout changes, the 2 Fableds, the Dreamweavers, the That All You Gots. Very teched out for the current meta. I like this build a lot. Mixing it up with 1 yellow Angelic Wrath as well is also very cool. If your opponent sees you pitch a yellow Angelic Wrath, that might be the color they play around later, only to get hit with a blue, or vice versa, right? They see you pitch a blue and they think I only need to block 2 extra, and then you come over the top with a yellow one. Also, when you pitch a yellow one, then they immediately know you have a ton of Angelic Wraths in your deck, because why wouldn't you just play 3 yellow or 3 blue? So once they see the 2 different colors, plays a lot of mind games with your opponent. But yeah, very cool list here, very fun deck. I'm glad to see Prism performing well. One of my favorite decks in the game. Moving on, we have Connor again at the Realm Fest 5K, this time playing Aelia. And it does seem like Aelia just gets more and more streamlined every time I see it. The only big standout difference I see here is Memorial Ground, the yellow Memorial Ground. Of course, this card's very good to put Red and Ledger back on top of your deck. Being able to just loop that against opponents could just be a on-the-spot game-winning play against something like Zen. The side deck also looking relatively standard. Balance of Justice is just like a staple in this deck now. You kind of have to play it with all of the Prism floating around. Also very good against Kayo, obviously. Long Draw Half Glove, also very standard now. Murkmire Grappler with all of the Enigma and Prism is also very standard now. Boarding 3 of it, I kind of like that. And then Fatigue and Infecting Shot, just like when Disruption fails, just throw as many numbers as you can at your opponent. Sometimes you have to side into that strategy. He is main decking Battering Bolt, which makes a lot of sense. This is just a arrow form of Weakest Link, right? So this is very good against all of the new heroes. This is more than just a side deck card now. It has just made its way into the main deck. Almost every deck gets hurt by Battering Bolt that's in the current meta. So it makes a lot of sense to move it to the main, whatever you call it, main or side, right? It doesn't really matter at the end of the day. What matters is what you're presenting in your 60 more often. And if you're presenting Battering Bolt more often in your 60 than not, I think it makes sense to just call it a main deck card at that point. Moving on, we have Christopher at the Realm Fest 5K getting 5th place, also with Zen. And this Zen is following suit with the Commanded Conquers and Enlightened Strikes. Just playing good numbered cards in Spinning Wheel Kick and Fluster Fist. Again, just going a little bit slower, a little bit more mid-range, and setting up those big combo turns. Playing Shifting Winds of the Mystic Beast still, the 8 Transcend cards, and Orion of a Mystic Tenets. So still very combo oriented, but yeah, definitely able to take slower turns, able to block and throw 2 cards, able to throw 1 card in Arsenal. Weakest Link still in the inventory though, and Sink Below. So the deck goes a lot slower now, a lot more setup based, a lot more deliberate and architectural with setting up these combo turns. Even playing 3 Warmonger's Diplomacy against all of the Aelia seems very good. AB3 and Spell Void with the Needles seems very good against Kayo as well, so he had a very good plan into that. So yeah, shout out to Christopher for getting top 8 there. Next up, we have Francisco, able to take 1st place at the Bulgarian Battle Hardened with Max, the Hype Nitro of all decks. Very cool, very impressive showing. Let's go ahead and jump into the list here. It's mostly a regular-ish Max deck, obviously able to do a bit of a switchboard game plan and kind of balance between a boost plan and Max V'ing, like aggro Max V down your opponent, and then making the mech. It does seem like he does like a switchboard and sides between those 2 strategies. Sporting the 3 copies of the new Supercell seems very strong. Also playing a decent number of equipment hate in 6 T-Bone and 2 Magnetic Shockwave seems very good against all of the Mystic heroes. Being able to snipe out their traverse with this kind of stuff seems very good. B3 between Vizier, Tronic, and Achilles Accelerator, and Spell Void 1 with the Spellfray Gloves kind of shores up the Kayo matchup in this deck. Just go full boost, and then AB3 Spell Void 1. It's hard for Kayo to do anything. He's also playing 3 Teklo Pounder, probably more of a side deck card than a main deck card, but it's very good when you're on the boost plan and you just want to take a turn off to set up. Sometimes it gets down to fatigue, and Teklo Pounder is a good way to come over the top when you're on that boost game plan. I did also do kind of a deck breakdown, a mastery guide, a how to play Max of a build very similar to this. Go ahead, check it out. It'll be at the end card of this video, so go ahead, check that out if you have any interest in this hero. But yeah, shout out to Francisco. Huge dub. Next up, we have Samueli. I hope I'm not butchering that name. Getting 2nd place at that same Battle Hardened on Enigma. So this will be the first Enigma deck we've looked at since the Zen bans, and the list itself very much reflects that. Leaning heavy into the Ward, Waning Vengeance making its way back into the deck, Waxing Spectre, Restless Coalescence all making its way back into the deck. Not having to be forced to play into Zens every round. You're able to do illusionist things again. You don't have to play around getting hit for 50 every turn. So it's kind of cool. You're able to set up a bunch of Ward and play Enigma the way she was meant to be played. Also worth noting that this list is playing 3 Ripple Away, which is very cool. And back on the auras, the Spectral auras, 3 Shimmers, 3 Haze Bending with the Vengeful Apparition package to be able to flash all that stuff out. 3 Warmonger's Diplomacy to counter the Azaleas. And interestingly enough, still sporting the Amnesia. I guess it still proved to be good enough, even though Zen is able to take so many off turns. Amnesia is just still a very powerful card. Being able to stop the Crouching Tiger synergy turns or the Red Bonds turns is still good enough, it turns out. This player is also playing 3 Unmovable, probably to shore up the Aelia matchup. And then AB3 plus Tunic for Kayo. Seems like a very cool deck, a very fun deck. I'm hoping Enigma goes back this direction. I don't like seeing Illusionists play as Guardians, so I am very excited to see a deck list like this do well. So shout out to Samueli for getting 2nd place in Bologna. All right, last up, we have Tim. Shout out to Tim for getting 3rd place at that same Battle Hardened with Riptide. Huge dub. This was a Battle Hardened of the underdogs, it seems. This Riptide was playing New Horizon, which is a lot different. Most Riptides don't typically do that, and the only reason they would is because they're on Heatseeker, which this player was on 3 Heatseeker. And this looks to be a very, very aggressively slanted Riptide list, which again, I like to see. Sporting 3 Battering Bolt, we talked about it. Battering Bolt's just a good card this meta, it turns out. And then playing the Pumps, laced with Blood Rot, laced with Inertia. Riptide kind of takes advantage of these cards more than any other hero does. Also side decking 2 Murkmire Grappler for the Enigma matchups, and then 3 Oasis Respite for the Kayo matchup. Very interesting stuff there. Prismatic Leyline is also a very interesting inclusion. Being able to combo that with the Rainbow Bolton shots does seem very strong, but I do kind of question Prismatic Leyline because there's just not a ton of targets in here. Putting Intoxicating Shot to a 7 power breakpoint is kind of interesting though. So yeah, it kind of does seem like this deck has a good aggro package with all of the Lace Withs and the Heat Seekers, but it also has a good defensive package in 3 Tar Pit Trap, 3 Boulder Trap, and then all of the Majestic Traps as well. This list is also playing 3 Deadeye. Very interesting because so many decks don't want to block this format, and Deadeye is the ultimate you have to block this card. So being able to turn on a Deadeye and throw it at your opponent, or throw it at your Zen opponent could be totally detrimental. That's all I got for you guys today. I'm very excited to see how Pro Tour Amsterdam shakes out. If you think any of these decks are going to do good at Amsterdam, if you look at Max and you think, wow, this is the sleeper pick of this format, it's going to do good at Amsterdam, then, you know, people comment and say, like, this isn't a market watch. But if you're paying attention, all this stuff kind of, like, correlates in with each other. It all intertwines, right? If Max does really good, then Supercell could go crazy, right? That's all I got for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, rate, subscribe, and help the algorithm help me out just a little bit. Later, gamers.